Ugh. That's the question all of us have been asking, right? Why does Brompton continue to use this old screw type clamping design? It seems antiquated, it seems outdated. A lot of people have asked, why don't they update their design? Why doesn't Brompton innovate? Well, in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly why Brompton sticks with this old screw type design. But before we get into that, guys, let's look at another type of folding mechanism. Let's look at what people consider to be a quick release latching lever on one of my other folding bikes. So this is your basic clamp design for most folding bicycles. It has a lock. This keeps the latch from actually opening unexpectedly. So you push this forward and then you can pull the latch outward. This is more of a vice grip type of clamping mechanism, but it won't allow you to unlatch unless you push this forward. But once you get good at it, you take two fingers, you take your thumb, you push it forward, and it comes open that quick. The question you guys got to ask yourself is, how many different failure points, how many mounting points does this latching mechanism actually have? I'll give you a second to guess. Okay guys, if you would have guessed 3, you would be completely wrong. There is actually 9 failure points. There's 3 mounting points, okay, but there's 9 failure points on this latching mechanism. That is quite a lot. Any one of the failures on this latching mechanism can cause that latching mechanism to open up and cause a catastrophic crash while you're riding down the road. Let's take a look at these 9 failure points. There is some variation to this design, but most folding bikes that fold in half use something very similar to this one. Most of them don't move like this one. This one actually has a little play, which is really nice. That means there's no stress on this rod itself. It has a little bit of play, but it does have an E-clip, which I would be very leery about that breaking and the whole thing coming open. But if you see these small aluminum pieces right here, you see these very, very small aluminum pieces, and you can see that this one is a little bit chipped. I don't know how that got chipped. It must have gotten chipped when I closed this. It has a very strong clamping design, and anytime you close that latch, it really locks into place very hard. So this chip might have been from opening and closing the bicycle frame. But this is a very, very thin piece of an aluminum, and already you can kind of see a little bit of damage. I've never wrecked this bike, but this damage could have come from just opening and closing it, which makes me very concerned. If this bike actually gets into a wreck, is this piece going to break? If this piece breaks, which is part of this side of the aluminum frame, that rod, that pin is going to come out. That pin can also break as well, and this rod can break. So that's 1, 2, 3 failure points, especially this little E-clip. That could come out and actually cause that whole pin to open up. So let's go over this again. The aluminum part of the frame can break. The actual pin itself, the part that actually hooks into the aluminum part of the frame, can break, and this rod can break on this particular side of the rod. If any one of those 3 points breaks, that's a failure of the latching mechanism. Similarly, you could have a failure on this side of the latch. And since the latch is on the outside of the bicycle, it's very easy to get damaged if you have a wreck. But if this cracks or breaks, that pin will fall out of there. You have a failure of the latching mechanism. If the actual pin itself breaks, you have a failure of the latching mechanism. If this side of the rod breaks, you have a failure of the latching mechanism. Finally, on this side, you have a pin that goes through the aluminum part of this side of the frame. If you crash this and crack the frame, that pin comes out of there, you have a failure of the latching mechanism. If the aluminum part of the latch breaks, the pin falls out, you have a failure of the latching mechanism, and of course the pin itself can break. So that's 3, 6, 9 failure points on this particular design latching mechanism. And then we're not even talking about this side of the actual hinge at all. We're not even talking about that side. We're just talking about 9 failure points on this side of the latching mechanism itself. And let's not forget for 1 second that this is aluminum. The latch is aluminum and the frame is aluminum, okay? How well is this thing going to survive a crash? What happens if I crash and I break something on the frame itself? What happens if this cracks and then that latch or that rod and that pin come out? What happens if that happens? You're throwing the bike in the trash. It's junk. Unless you know somebody who can weld aluminum, unless you know somebody who can fabricate, you're screwed. Now, unlike the Turn that has 9 failure points, let's take a look at the Bromptons. The Brompton only has 3 failure points, guys. 3. You have this bolt here that can break. You have this little clamp piece that can break. And of course, you got the hole that the actual screw bolts into. That could break. So it's 3 different failure points. The frame itself is made of steel. It's very unlikely that the hole that the bolt mounts into is going to strip out or break. It's very, very unlikely. You know, steel is real. It's not going to break. The bolt itself is steel. So you don't really have to worry about this or the frame breaking. So when I hear people say that the Brompton doesn't innovate and they don't update their design to one of those newer quick release latching mechanisms, I think that thought, that mindset comes from a place of ignorance, guys. Let's just look at it this way, guys. If this clamping mechanism actually fails, if this piece breaks, the frame is not going to break. That's just not going to happen. That's like a minuscule, infinitesimally small chance that that's actually going to break. But if the clamp itself breaks, you can run down to your local Brompton dealer, you can order it offline, and you can get another one of these and you're back up and running. If the Turn breaks, if the Turn or the Dayhan latches break, you might as well toss that bicycle in the garbage. You're not going to get parts for it, and there's no way to fix it if the frame breaks on those bicycles. So which rather you have, especially if you accidentally knock the bike over or get into an accident, which bike would you rather have? A real steel bicycle that if it does fall over or if it does crash, you're more than likely going to be okay in the frame department. And if you absolutely have to replace a clamp, just replace one of these. Or would you rather risk damaging the quick release mechanism on the Turn or the Dayhan or any of the other folding bikes that use that clamp design? Would you rather break those and toss the bike into the garbage or replace this? To me, I'd rather replace this. People don't understand the engineering that goes into this piece right here, especially this piece. Brompton doesn't innovate and make some quick release design because they know that they're going to introduce way more points of failure. And if something does fail, if the latching mechanism fails, it is very difficult to replace those quick release designs. It just is. So Brompton sticks with the simplistic design because they know it's going to last and they know it's easy to repair if something does happen to it. It just drives me crazy because the very thing that they praise Brompton for, its durability, its longevity, is the very thing that they bitch about. And that's, oh, why don't they innovate? Well, because this works. It's simplistic, it works really, really well, and it's very, very unlikely to fail on you. And if it does fail, it's very easy to replace. So why would they change it into a more complex design that is very difficult to fix, if impossible to fix, and that's more prone to failure? It just doesn't make sense why people, just don't understand that. Now we're getting to the part of the video where we're going to talk about replacement clamps, because a lot of people have asked me, hey Brian, what kind of clamps would you suggest putting on the Brompton? There's 2 reasons why people want to replace their factory OEM clamps. One is for vanity reasons or for aesthetic reasons. Some manufacturers offer different colors and they color coordinate their clamps with their basket or whatever, And then the other reason is for increased functionality, maybe a quick release version of this. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I would never, ever replace the factory OEM clamps with an aftermarket version. You guys have to understand this is the keystone of your entire bicycle. And if it fails, your bicycle is going to come open on you while you're riding down the road and it's going to cause a catastrophic crash. There are several reasons why I would never replace these. The first reason I would never replace these under any circumstances, because Brompton has spent decades refining their design. A lot of people don't believe this, but a lot of engineering goes into this one little piece right here. The exact shape, the metallurgy, everything. They have spent decades refining just this little piece right here. Think about this for a second, guys. A lot of these cheap multicolored versions of these come off cheap Chinese sites like Alibaba. People get on there and go, ooh, look, there's multicolored ones. I'm gonna get a pink one, I'm gonna get a blue one, Anybody can take this piece right here, get a lathe, get the dimensions, and machine a piece of aluminum to, use as a clamp. Just think about it for a second, guys. A cheap Chinese manufacturer didn't spend decades finding the proper metallurgy, finding the proper shape. They didn't spend a lot of research and design. They probably just bought one of these off the Brompton website, got the exact dimensions, took a piece of aluminum and machined one to look exactly like it. but that doesn't mean it has the same metallurgy. It doesn't mean it has the same strength and rigidity. It doesn't mean that it's the exact same thing as this. It doesn't even mean that the manufacturing process is exactly the same. There might be imperfections in the metal. And if you use one of these cheap Chinese knockoff ones and you put it on your bicycle and it breaks on you because it's made of cheap metal, unlike this, what's going to happen? Is that company going to be responsible? Are you going to be able to sue them because their part broke or their part failed? More than likely not, guys. You're just going to have to bend over and take it with a cactus. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to have any recourse whatsoever. That's why I really don't recommend you replacing these at all, because you just don't know what you're getting. Brompton has a reputation to uphold. They build quality stuff, okay? You know that this isn't going to break on you. Guys, I would trust this with my life. I would not trust one off of a cheap site like Alibaba, because you just don't know what you're getting. Now, I know what a lot of you guys are saying. You know, those quick release ones, they're built with titanium, they come off of a reputable site, and you're like, oh, Brian, I've got a clamp and it's worked fine for me and I've never had a problem with it. I understand that, guys, but here's another problem, and this is the second reason why I would never replace these. The second reason is because this is designed to wear. You see this right here? It is designed to wear out. When the clamp itself fits onto the frame, you'll notice that there's a gap right here. You see that gap? After a while of clamping it down and undoing it, clamping it down and undoing it, and the frame running down the road and this flexing a little bit, these ears are going to wear out. When these ears start to wear down, this gap right here is going to get less and less and less. So this little clamp, this little aluminum piece, is made to wear. So not only is it made to be strong, it is actually made to wear out. So eventually, after clamping it on and off so many times, you're going to tighten this down, and what you're going to hear is you're going to hear this play in the frame, because this piece will have bottomed out against the frame. Once that happens, it's time to replace this clamp. See, now I tighten it and you don't feel any play in the frame itself. So this thing is actually meant to wear. That's the genius of this design. It's actually meant to wear out. It's also strong, but it's also soft enough to wear. Now think about it, okay? If you buy one offline that's supposedly so strong, because a reputable company is going to say, hey, I don't want this thing breaking on me, right? They're going to say, I don't want this clamp breaking. So they're going to build it out of some strong titanium alloy or whatever. And you're going to be okay from the thing not breaking on you. It's not going to break. It'll be strong enough, and you're not going to have to worry about that. But is it going to have the same wear properties? I don't know. I don't know about these other clamps. The wear properties are what we're going to have to worry about. You see, a softer metal is going to wear out before a harder metal does. In this case, the actual clamp itself, the little aluminum piece, is softer than the frame metal. But let's just say that your replacement clamp, the little titanium piece, is stronger than the frame itself. Which one is going to wear when you're clamping it on and off every single day, or when you're riding down the road and there's some flex on that piece? And see, that's the whole thing. We don't know about these aftermarket clamps. I don't think anybody's done like a long-term intensive test with these types of clamps. Let's just be honest. A lot of people use these folding bikes every once in a while. They ride their full-size bike, but if they're going to travel or they're going to need the particular properties of a folding bicycle, most people will say, okay, I'll take my folding bike this time. So we don't really know if people have actually put these aftermarket clamps through some intensive testing. And it would be something I'd be willing to do just to see, but here's the thing. If the clamp itself is harder than the frame, what is going to wear out first? So it just becomes a question of what rather you wear out. Would you rather wear out the ears of the clamp itself or the ears of the frame? Would you rather wear this piece or this piece? Personally, I don't want to take the chance. I'd rather wear out the clamp itself. That's why I would never, ever, ever recommend replacing the factory Brompton clamps with an aftermarket version. I'm not saying that there isn't a clamp out there made exactly the same way that the Brompton factory one is. Maybe there is. I don't know. I just wouldn't trust it. I would trust the one Brompton makes. I know a lot of you guys are disappointed and you're like, ugh, I guess I'll stick with the factory clamps. I'd really rather have one of those nice shiny ones that quick releases, so it'll be a little bit easier. I know there's some of you out there saying that right now. And I am not here to leave you guys empty-handed. I'm going to show you a way, a simplistic way to keep the clamps from spinning when you're tightening them down. And it isn't going to cost you any money and no upgrade needed. When you get to this position right here, lean the bicycle over like this. Then take your fingers and push the aluminum piece of the clamp into place. And then you could spin it with your hand and it tightens up. It's as simple as that. It's the same thing when you're tightening the clamp for the frame itself. Watch. You lean the bicycle over to the side, you put the clamp into place by pushing the aluminum piece to the frame with your fingers, and then you could just spin the thing. And it tightens right up. Let gravity work for you. Don't keep the bike vertical, keep it to the side. That way gravity will hold the actual aluminum piece into place and you can tighten it up really fast. You saw how quick that was. It's a very simplistic thing. You don't need to replace your clamps with a quick release model. Anyway, guys, I hope this answers some of your questions why I would never replace these clamps. I hope you guys got a little bit of information from this video. And if you have any more questions, leave it down in the comment section below. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Guys, slap a like on the video if you like it. And for those of you out there that are wondering when I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the Brompton Chapter 3, that video is coming. So just be patient with me. I'm very, very backlogged on videos right now. Anyway, guys, have a nice day. I'm going to go out there and ride this beautiful machine, and I will talk with you guys on the next video. Bye-bye.